This afternoon witnessed a dramatic confrontation involving the former President Donald Trump during his appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists conference in Chicago. The event, which was broadcast live, quickly unraveled into a chaotic exchange. From the outset, the situation became contentious. The former president launched into a vehement outburst against the first moderator, Rachel Scott of ABC News, shortly after she posed a question regarding his previous comments on race. This intense reaction set the tone for what would be a turbulent session. The confrontation escalated as the former president questioned Vice President Kamala Harris's racial identity. This provocative line of questioning added to the already charged atmosphere, leading to a scene of escalating tension that unfolded live on television. Listen to this discussion, questioning the language used for Kamala Harris. Some of your own supporters, including certain Republicans on Capitol Hill, have described Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first Black and Asian American woman to serve on a major party's national ticket, as a DEI hire. Is this terminology acceptable to you? And will you address these Republicans and supporters to urge them to stop using this label? Clarifying definitions and intentions. Can you clarify what you understand by the term DEI? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Is that how you define it? Please, go ahead. How do you interpret DEI? I believe the situation might be more complex. From my perspective, it seems that her selection might have involved various factors, not just her racial identity. I have had some indirect interactions with her over time, though not on a personal level. Throughout her career, she has been prominently associated with Indian heritage, frequently advocating for and celebrating the values and cultural aspects of her Indian background. It was only in recent years that I became aware of her self-identification as Black, which came as a considerable surprise. Her earlier public persona was firmly rooted in her Indian identity, making this shift in how she identifies both unexpected and intriguing. This development raises intricate questions about her current identity. The complexity arises from her historical association with Indian culture versus her recent embrace of a Black identity. Historically, she has identified as Black and has been actively involved with historically Black institutions, such as attending a historically Black college. This involvement highlights her alignment with Black identity and culture. While it is crucial to honor and respect her self-identification, the transition from a strong association with Indian heritage to a new identification as Black introduces an element of ambiguity. This shift suggests a profound personal transformation and prompts broader reflections on identity. It raises questions about how individuals navigate and reconcile their cultural and racial affiliations over time. Her recent choice to identify as Black, despite her previous emphasis on Indian heritage, reflects the dynamic and often fluid nature of identity. This change is emblematic of larger discussions about how individuals experience and articulate their racial and cultural identities, and how these identities can evolve in response to personal experiences and societal influences. The conversation begins with a provocative statement. She became a Black person. This remark is followed by a clarifying question from the interviewer. Just to be clear, sir, do you believe she's? This exchange indicates a contentious discussion about the individual's racial or ethnic identity, which seems to be a central issue in the dialogue. The response, "I think somebody should look into that too," when you ask to continue in a very hostile and nasty tone, suggests that the question was posed in an aggressive manner. The speaker implies that the manner in which questions are asked, hostile and confrontational, can influence the responses and the overall tone of the discussion. The next question posed is, do you believe Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire? This question addresses whether Harris's appointment is perceived as part of diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI initiatives. The response, "I don't know, could be," reflects uncertainty and a lack of definitive stance on whether Harris's role was influenced by DEI considerations. The observation, "It is amazing he's gotten away with that for as long as he has," reflects surprise at the duration for which certain statements or actions have been overlooked or accepted. This comment suggests a broader critique of the accountability mechanisms in place and the duration of certain controversies or behaviors. The conversation, lasting 35 minutes, is described as consistently contentious. Throughout the discussion, tensions remained high, and the dialogue was marked by confrontations. Notably, Donald Trump defended his comments about black jobs even while speaking to a room full of black journalists, which highlights the charged atmosphere and the ongoing debate surrounding his statements. I want to address the situation by saying that there are millions of individuals arriving from the border who are allegedly taking jobs that are traditionally held by black workers. The implication here is that these new arrivals are displacing black workers from their positions. A pertinent question arises: could you clarify what you mean by a black job? The response provided is, a black job refers simply to any job held by someone. In other words, it is any job, regardless of who holds it. The term is used to describe employment without specifying any particular type of role. Vice President Kamala Harris's reaction to this statement has been severe, describing it as a significant blunder for Donald Trump. This reaction underscores the problematic nature of Trump's comments and reflects broader concerns about his approach and rhetoric. A source close to Vice President Kamala Harris has responded to former President Donald Trump's assertion that she, in his words, became black. The source described Trump's claim as utterly false and easily refutable. The response highlights Harris's long-standing ties to the black community, noting that she attended Howard University, a historically black institution, and is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc., which is also historically black. These affiliations underscore her deep connection to and long-standing involvement with the black community. Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, initially reacted to Trump's comments with laughter, but then expressed her disapproval more seriously. She emphasized that such statements are not only offensive, but also unacceptable. Jean-Pierre, as a black woman herself, articulated that Trump's remarks are repulsive and insulting. She firmly stated that no one has the authority to dictate or question another person's identity or how they choose to define themselves. Such personal and identity-related assertions, she argued, are not only disrespectful, but also a violation of individual autonomy and self-determination. The decision regarding one's personal experiences is inherently individual. It belongs solely to the person who has lived through those experiences. Only the individual in question can truly articulate what their experience has been like, as their perspective is unique and personal. This is especially pertinent in the case of Kamala Harris. It is deeply disrespectful for anyone, regardless of their status, be it a former leader or a former president, to diminish or undermine her perspective. Kamala Harris, as the Vice President of the United States, holds a significant position of authority and respect. Therefore, it is imperative that we accord her the respect and recognition that her office and her experiences deserve. Her role and her voice are crucial, and it is essential to honor and acknowledge them appropriately. Any attempt to belittle or question her experiences without understanding her position is not only insulting, but undermines the respect due to her as a prominent public figure. We are joined by some of our esteemed experts and valued friends. Reverend Al Sharpton, the prominent host of Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network, is with us. His insights and leadership in social justice and political discourse are always highly anticipated. Seated at the table with me is Claire McCaskill, co-host of MSNBC's podcast. Claire, a trusted ally and insightful commentator, brings a wealth of experience and perspective to our discussion. Additionally, we have NBC News correspondent Yamiche Alcindor, who is present at the convention in Chicago, providing live coverage of Donald Trump's appearance as it unfolds. Yamiche is also our dedicated correspondent covering the Harris campaign, offering in-depth reporting and analysis. Yamiche, let's start with you. Please provide us with your assessment of the situation. Evaluate the various offenses and controversies, not only in terms of their impact on the people present at the event, but also their broader implications. We're interested in your take on how these incidents rank and resonate with the wider public, reflecting on a pivotal moment in this campaign season. In what has been an extraordinary campaign season, one moment stands out as particularly significant. It was truly remarkable to witness former President Donald Trump engaging directly with a group of black journalists who had extended an invitation for him to discuss a range of critical topics. This interaction was not just a routine press event, but a meaningful opportunity for Trump to address questions on various issues, including his policy positions, his perspectives on the current campaign, his views on America, and his vision for the future. What made this moment even more striking was the manner in which Trump addressed Vice President Kamala Harris. His approach was notably confrontational, as he questioned not only her policy positions, but also her identity and authenticity. This level of scrutiny was intense and unprecedented, reflecting a deep-seated examination of her credentials and character. The way Trump challenged Harris raised significant questions about her place in the political landscape, and this confrontation was both compelling and controversial to witness. Overall, this exchange exemplifies the high-stakes nature of this election season, where every interaction and public statement carries weight and significance. The dynamics of such confrontations provide a deeper insight into the complexities of political discourse and the personal attacks that often accompany it. Having closely monitored Kamala Harris's career trajectory, from her tenure as a U.S. Senator over a decade ago to her current role as Vice President, it is apparent that she has consistently exhibited exceptional clarity and depth when discussing her personal background and identity. My extensive coverage of her campaign and numerous interviews with her provide first-hand insight into her remarkable ability to articulate her heritage with both precision and nuance. Kamala Harris frequently underscores the significance of her diverse heritage, which is deeply intertwined with her family's history. She often highlights the impact of her parents on her identity, her father, a black man of Jamaican descent, and her mother, who was of Indian origin. This rich multicultural background has significantly influenced her worldview and personal identity. Harris recounts the story of how her parents met through their activism in the civil rights movement, and how her mother, even while Harris was still a child, took her to protests in a stroller, embedding her in a tradition of activism from an early age. Through her reflections on her upbringing, Harris reveals a profound sense of self-awareness and a well-developed understanding of her identity, shaped by her familial and cultural experiences. Her narratives not only highlight the pivotal role her parents played in shaping her perspective, but also demonstrate how these early experiences have informed her broader approach to societal issues. This articulate expression of her background showcases her dedication to recognizing and honoring her heritage while addressing the complex and pressing issues she has championed throughout her political career. In essence, Kamala Harris's ability to convey her heritage with such clarity and depth reflects her commitment to embracing her diverse background and its impact on her role as a public servant. Her personal stories and the way she integrates them into her professional narrative underscore the authenticity and richness of her identity, making her a compelling figure in the political landscape. To suggest that she has only recently begun to acknowledge her African-American heritage, while previously only identifying as Indian, is fundamentally inaccurate, Nicole. She attended a historically black college, where she pledged and became a member of a historically black sorority, the very first African-American sorority established in this country. Throughout her career, she has consistently emphasized the significance of racial justice and has frequently connected these issues to her personal identity. Her long-standing commitment to these causes is well documented. Given this background, it's astonishing to consider that former President Trump believed his remarks, an apparent attack on her identity, would have any substantive impact. It's difficult to understand how he expected this insult to be effective or convincing, especially given her extensive history of engagement with racial and social justice issues. The situation at hand seems almost incomprehensible. When analyzing the reporting and recounting the events from that day, it becomes clear that the reaction in the room was one of disbelief and astonishment. During the meeting, it was evident that attendees were shocked by the unfolding developments. To provide some insight into the atmosphere, the scene was charged with tension. Many people in the room were visibly startled, with some reacting audibly by gasping or expressing their discontent. There were even instances where individuals vocally disputed the statements being made, denouncing them as falsehoods. This heightened tension was likely exacerbated by the fact that the president had previously targeted a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. This backdrop of animosity contributed significantly to the charged environment, making the reactions from those present more intense and emotionally charged. There has been significant debate regarding whether he should have been invited, with opinions varying widely. When he began making comments about her race, it created a palpable sense of discomfort and anger in the room. The atmosphere shifted notably, reflecting the intense emotions of some attendees. As journalists, our role is to cover events and individuals with objectivity and fairness. However, when statements are made that are factually incorrect or target someone's racial identity, it crosses a line. Such remarks not only hurt, but also undermine the principles of fair and respectful discourse. I want to share some of the feedback I received, which reveals the extent of frustration and outrage expressed by many. The comments were overwhelmingly critical and indicated a strong sense of disapproval. Trump's behavior seems to be a recurring issue, as he appears to be unable to restrain himself. This pattern has become all too familiar. Recently, someone criticized a statement from Karine Jean-Pierre, describing it as both insulting and repulsive. The criticism echoed the sentiment expressed from the podium, highlighting how certain remarks can deeply offend and upset individuals. Another individual dismissed the criticism as a blatant lie, asserting that it is easily disproven, particularly given Jean-Pierre's academic background, having attended Howard University, which should lend credibility to her stance. Conversely, someone else expressed that the situation is painful, reflecting on the broader context of discrimination faced by Black individuals. Reverend Al Sharpton, for instance, is well positioned to address this issue due to his extensive experience and historical perspective on the struggles of Black communities. There is a long history of Black individuals enduring discrimination and violence based on their race, which adds significant weight to the conversation about public statements and their impacts. The discourse surrounding these statements underscores the ongoing challenges and sensitivities related to race and public dialogue. Vice President Kamala Harris has significantly positioned herself within the historical context of civil rights activism. Her appearances and speeches, particularly at significant locations like the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, highlight her commitment to addressing issues of racial justice and equality. This iconic bridge, associated with the pivotal Selma to Montgomery marches of the 1960s, symbolizes the ongoing struggle for civil rights and serves as a powerful backdrop for Harris's advocacy. However, it's important to recognize that while there can be legitimate policy disagreements and differing visions for addressing societal issues, the nature of the recent attacks on Harris goes beyond mere policy critique. Such attacks have been particularly pointed and intense, reflecting a broader tension that transcends typical political discourse. These criticisms have not only questioned her policies, but have also targeted her role and contributions in a manner that reveals deeper undercurrents of division and conflict. In summary, while policy differences are an inherent part of political debate and can reflect diverse perspectives, the recent attacks on Vice President Harris have involved a level of vitriol that goes beyond standard political disagreement. This underscores the broader challenges she faces as she navigates her role and the historical legacy she embodies. Prior to the commencement of the event, Donald Trump took to Truth Social to accuse Vice President Kamala Harris, who is expected to be the Democratic presidential nominee, of refusing to participate in the convention in the same manner he did. However, this assertion was not accurate. According to confirmations from news outlets and the leadership of the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, Harris was unable to attend in person due to a scheduling conflict. Furthermore, it was the NABJ leadership that chose not to permit her to conduct a virtual conversation with journalists during the convention, contrary to what might have been expected. As the event unfolded, it largely conformed to the predictions of many observers who anticipated it would be contentious. Despite NABJ's assurances that Trump's statements would be subjected to live fact-checking on social media, the execution fell short. The PolitiFact feed, which was assigned the task of verifying the accuracy of Trump's claims, failed to address all of his falsehoods comprehensively. Additionally, the panelists present did not manage to correct every inaccuracy in real time, leaving several unchallenged. Trump's appearance began with a combative exchange with the moderator, Rachel Scott, a senior congressional correspondent for ABC. Scott questioned him about his history of racially charged rhetoric, which led to a defensive and petulant response from Trump. This interaction set a confrontational tone for the remainder of the event, highlighting the challenges of managing high-profile interviews and discussions involving controversial figures. In response to a pointed question, Donald Trump remarked, "I don't believe I've ever been asked a question in such an offensive manner. You didn't even begin with a polite greeting, such as, 'Hello, how are you?' Instead, you launched directly into a hostile inquiry. Are you affiliated with ABC? I regard them as a purveyor of fake news, a truly dreadful network. I find this entire situation disgraceful." Trump continued by asserting that he has made significant contributions to the Black community. He also praised Faulkner, calling him a fantastic person, which is consistent with his tendency to offer positive comments about individuals who align with his views. However, Trump's response was marred by a series of falsehoods. He inaccurately claimed that Kamala Harris had only recently embraced her Black identity, alleging that for years she had solely identified with her Indian heritage. This assertion is false and misleading. Harris, a graduate of a historically Black college and university, HBCU, has identified as Black from a young age, in line with her actual racial and cultural background. Trump's claims echo a right-wing narrative that questions Harris's Black identity, despite her father's Jamaican heritage and her own long-standing self-identification. Additionally, Trump repeated his false claim of an invasion of immigrants from prisons and mental institutions, taking jobs from Black Americans. This misleading rhetoric, which he has used in previous debates and statements, continues to misrepresent the reality of immigration and job markets. It's worth noting that the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, also honors journalists from outside the U.S., raising questions about how international attendees might have reacted to such statements. If I or a group of people believed that an individual was being unjustly prosecuted, perhaps due to their success or due to an innocent error, it is crucial to distinguish between a person's character and the nature of their actions. Making a genuine mistake is vastly different from being inherently malicious. An innocent mistake, if not driven by ill intent, deserves a more compassionate and supportive response. In such cases, providing assistance to the individual is both a moral and ethical obligation. The recent event, which was anticipated to be problematic by members of the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, has led to significant unrest within the organization. The event has contributed to a sense of mistrust and discontent among NABJ members toward its leadership. This unrest manifested in a protest outside the event, the resignation of an NABJ convention co-chair, and several speakers withdrawing from their scheduled discussions. The controversy underscores broader internal conflicts within NABJ. As highlighted by the Columbia Journalism Review in 2018, the organization has been grappling with divisions over evolving trends in journalism. There is a notable generational and ideological split. Some long-standing members and traditionalists are at odds with younger journalists who are more aligned with the rapid changes in new media. This internal discord was evident in the lead-up to the event, revealing differing perspectives on how NABJ should handle its traditional practices versus contemporary standards. The debate surrounding the invitation of Donald Trump to speak at the event reflects these internal conflicts. Supporters of the decision argued that NABJ's historical precedent of inviting presidential candidates justified extending an invitation to Trump. On the other hand, critics contended that Trump's extensive history of dishonesty and his documented illiberal views, exposed over nearly a decade, warranted a departure from this precedent. I align with the latter perspective. While NABJ leadership may have had valid reasons for raising questions about a potential second term for Trump, The rationale for choosing Trump, a figure known for his frequent dishonesty and antagonism towards NABJ members, remains insufficiently justified. The decision to provide him a platform without implementing stringent safeguards or considerations was problematic. It failed to address the concerns and expectations of the organization's members, leading to a contentious and unresolved situation. Former President Donald Trump made a highly anticipated appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, convention in Chicago on Wednesday. The event, moderated by ABC's Rachel Scott, was marked by a notably combative and contentious exchange. Inside the venue, Trump engaged in a spirited discussion with panelists and attendees, reflecting the polarized nature of his visit. Outside the convention center, the atmosphere was equally charged with tension. The afternoon saw a series of dueling protests, with demonstrators sharply divided over Trump's presence in the city. On one side, supporters of the former president gathered to express their approval and enthusiasm for his visit. On the other, a vocal group of dissenters voiced their strong opposition, signaling their discontent with Trump's appearance and underscoring the broader controversy surrounding his public engagements. This juxtaposition of fervent support and intense protest highlighted the deeply divided sentiments surrounding Trump, illustrating the polarized political climate that continues to shape public discourse in America. Donald Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ conference, stirred significant controversy, primarily due to his history of making disparaging remarks about black women in the press. His visit was further marred by internal dissent within the NABJ, culminating in the resignation of the convention's co-chair. The co-chair's departure was a direct response to feeling excluded from the decision to provide Trump a platform at the event, highlighting underlying tensions within the organization. From the outset of the panel discussion, the atmosphere was charged. Scott, one of the panelists, directly confronted Trump about his previous disrespectful comments towards black female journalists and questioned why black voters should consider supporting him. Trump's reaction to the inquiry was notably defensive. "I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner," Trump responded, implying that the query was unfairly phrased from the beginning. His response reflects a broader pattern of evasion and defensiveness when faced with critical questions. Another point of contention was Trump's previous controversial statement suggesting that undocumented immigrants were taking black jobs. This comment had already sparked outrage and discussion among journalists. During the conference, Trump reiterated his stance on the issue, reinforcing his controversial position rather than addressing the criticism it had generated. Trump's contentious visit to the NABJ conference not only fueled existing debates about his rhetoric, but also underscored the complex dynamics between public figures and media organizations. The panel's combative nature and the fallout from the co-chair's resignation reflect deeper issues of representation and respect within the media industry, particularly concerning the treatment of marginalized groups. During a recent discussion, former President Donald Trump made a controversial statement about employment and immigration, which has sparked significant debate. He claimed that millions and millions of people coming from the border are taking black jobs, a remark that has raised numerous questions and concerns. When pressed by journalist Scott on what he meant by black jobs, Trump responded vaguely, saying, "A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job, and they take it." This explanation was criticized for its lack of clarity and specificity. Trump's use of the term black jobs has been described as problematic and denigrating, as it implies that certain jobs are inherently associated with black individuals and can be taken away by others. This terminology has been widely criticized for its potential to perpetuate racial stereotypes and create unnecessary divisions. Journalist and ABC7 political analyst Laura Washington highlighted the frustration felt by many, stating, "He has yet to provide a clear definition of what he means by black jobs. He simply stated that it refers to anyone with a job, but this is a deeply problematic term that many African Americans and others are seeking to understand more clearly." Washington emphasized that the question of what constitutes a black job was her top priority, and Trump's failure to address this issue adequately has left many unsatisfied. Trump's comments come at a time when he has been making strides in gaining support among black voters, particularly black men. However, with Vice President Kamala Harris poised to be his opponent in the upcoming November elections, the political landscape is shifting. Harris's presence as a candidate introduces new dynamics and scrutiny. In recent interactions, Trump has made disparaging remarks about Kamala Harris and deflected questions about Republican criticisms that she is a DEI hire, an acronym for diversity, equity, and inclusion. When asked to clarify the term DEI, Trump repeatedly redirected the question to the journalist who provided definitions. Additionally, Trump's comments appeared to question